Okay, welcome to Monday. Welcome to our 10 o'clock, going through agenda review. Looks like first item is Public Works.
Good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. Grabbing my glasses, sorry. So Public Works has numerous items on the consent agenda this week. We start off with two, excuse me, call for hearings for franchise agreements with Zayo Group and Mox Networks. Those are both cable franchises, and they currently have facilities in the county, and we are just getting the franchise established. It's a north-south line that runs from the county. So if you look at the engineer's report, it has a bunch of roads with mileposts because that is where it crosses county facilities. So those are two calls for hearing to be held on November 5th.
Susan, are any of those name changes where companies have been purchased and we have to change the names?
Yes, this was a very confusing one because one of them owns the conduit, one of them owns the cable itself, and they purchased these rights from someone else. So it's been a very convoluted process getting these going, because there was a third party involved also that we did a few months ago. So.
Just to be clear, the conduit owned by a company just means that they got the franchise to put the conduit in, but I could start another company and ask you to franchise me to let me put a conduit in also.
Yes.
And that's perfectly, so we're not advocating any company. We're not exclusively ever giving anyone a franchise.
No, these are all non-exclusive franchises.
And a requirement that they have to repair any damage to the pavement as they go underground.
Correct. And they have to move if they are in the way of a public works project in the future. So if we're doing a project and their facilities interfere with the new road, then their facilities need to be moved in a timely manner. Timely being key, which we struggle with some of our franchisees.
So I've noticed, and I may bring it up at the hearing though, that sometimes those repairs kind of get worse as soon as they get put in because they're not done properly, I'm assuming. And there's a little gap, and we've seen that right out here with some of the temporary patches. And it's like they didn't really put the base in, or but they covered it up and looked good at the time. So.
And that's correct. And we have a utility accommodation policy that covers workmanship, and we have had people go back and fix things. So in one case where we received a lot of calls, they were going up, I believe it was Mount Brinion, it was the gas company, and they tore up almost one entire lane. And unfortunately, they did it late in the season. But we had an agreement with them. Yes, you can do this work, but they had to come back and repave that entire lane. So we have had them come back in the past.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And coupled with that is, do we have a policy there? Like we notice that they're tearing stuff up here, and I'm sure that's a franchise kind of thing also. Not the county though, probably, right, at this point?
No, this is all in either city right of way or WashDOT right of way.
Yeah, and still the example is the same. They block off part of the traffic from major areas, and it actually infuriates me because they do so without any regard to the public. And I never see any accommodation. Is there an accommodation that says you will do this from 11 p.m. to 4 AM?
So we issue permits for when they're doing any work besides emergency work. They are required to get a permit to work in the right of way. And we can add conditions onto those permits about timing of the work and what they have to do for their repairs. The majority of our work is obviously not in quite as busy as this location, but we also require that you submit a traffic control plan for approval. So we get their plan of what their work is being done and their traffic control plan. And if we don't find it adequate, we will say, no, you can't do that. You can only block traffic for 20 minutes, which is our standard. You cannot have more than a 20-minute traffic delay. We also have put restrictions in around schools that your timing has to allow the buses through. That's been one of our big things, like work on Rose Valley Road. You can't block those buses. An Ostrander was another location where they wanted big delays, and we were like, you can't block those buses, especially in the morning when they're trying to get those kids to school.
Excellent, I appreciate that.
Along those same lines, I know we had a project that was being threatened because we are having trouble with one of these franchises moving cable or doing something for us to get into the creek. Do we have a ability to put in wording in these things that tightens that up? I mean, didn't we have to get attorneys involved to move this along?
So we were very close, and it's actually one of the things I am working with Doug Jensen on right now is a stricter policy from Public Works, because when we're doing a design project, so all of our franchisees get a copy of the 6-year plan every year, so they can look at it, know what's coming up. When we hit 30% design, we send all the utilities that are within the project limits a set of the plans with, here's our 30% plans. It looks like you're going to be impacted. Our construction is scheduled for XYZ. We also send them at 60, and then before we end at 95%, right before we go out to bid. So what we're working with Doug is these triggering letters that go with it that lay out our timeline. So when they're at 60%, we send them the 60% plans, and we're going to say, we expect you to send us your 60% plans on how you're going to relocate this facility. And then at the 90%, we're bidding this date. You need to get your process done prior to it. And he says that way, excuse me, prior to our construction start date, so that we can move forward in a better manner, so that we're set up in a court if we ever have somebody that doesn't move, to say, we have given them plenty ample warning, so that the court can say, you get out there now. So that is what we're working on right now.
So Doug believes that will give us stronger teeth.
Stronger
to
teeth.
have these people move. Okay.
Yes.
And for actual specific instances, who does the review in your office?
For, well,
I
on the,
come up with you with a plan and this and that. You know,
so
plans are wonderful.
the project engineer on each project reviews the plans, and then the construction manager so on project like this where they're out doing repairs, they go through the construction manager and the construction inspector. And if they're really big projects like this one, they would generally bring it across my desk to make sure I'm good with what they're seeing.
And all of those are employees of
Public Works.
Public Works. How are we doing there? Are we able to keep up with the workload? Apparently we are, right?
We're a little behind where we want to be. We've been having a big push, and so there's been some things that have dropped slower than we want them to, but yeah, we're very busy. All right, let's see. What else do we have for you guys this week?
Meters.
Meters, yes. So we have the request for proposal for the purchase of the residential water meters, which we've discussed with you for ARPA funding. We have a grand total of about $1,250 meters, most of them being 3/4 inch meters, which is your standard home meter, and a handful both of 1 inch and 2 inch meters.
If I remember right, these things will save some labor costs because they don't have to be hand read, right?
Correct.
They'd be able to drive by with the computer and they'll
That's correct.
plug it in, download it, and
Mhm.
save some money on that.
And this request for proposals is, it's not, we're looking for all types of reads. When I say that, all types of virtual reads, so maybe there's equipment out there that we can get it just downloaded to our employees' phones. Maybe there's no drive-by component. So we're really looking at what's the best possible product through this request for proposals.
Question on those, the accuracy of the meters in an ideal condition?
Because I don't know the product necessarily yet, ideally, of course, accuracy would be much, all I can say would be much better than what we have now with manual reads, just because of issues with reads, blocked meters.
Oh, yeah, but you're going out for new bids.
Correct.
So bid A, B, and C will come in, hopefully.
Yeah,
And you'll say bid A is cheaper, but it's not accurate enough. So I'm
Correct.
asking what the accuracy spec might be.
I wasn't here when it hit the agenda, but I think the scoring mechanism. Did she include the scoring to, okay.
If you want, you can answer that in the morning tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah.
will do.
So then the next item we have is a call for bids for sand. This is 3,000 tons of screen sand to stockpile 750 tons in each of our road shops for use during the winter weather.
Getting ready for winter, are you?
Got to plan early because by November, some years we're already seeing frosted roads. I've heard they've plowed as late as the end of May on some of our higher elevations. All right.
To ask you something, Sean?
I'm all prepared.
Got nothing, yeah.
So next we have the contract completion letter to Compass Construction for the Kalama River Road Culvert Replacement Project. The project came in well under bid and the construction came in under the initial budget. So the engineer's estimate was $173,500 and the final cost of the project was $102,326.29.
That doesn't happen very often.
It does not, and we're always happy when it does happen.
And I don't recognize this company. Is that a new company, newly formed, or?
So it's a newer company out of La Center. They also did the Slide Creek project. We've been very happy. They get out there, they get in and get out as fast as they can. They keep the traffic on Kalama River Road. We did not receive complaints about their traffic control. Slide Creek, we allowed them to shut that down through the project. So we have been very happy and hope they bid on more of this type of jobs. They seem to be right-sized for that type of work. Did you want to take the final so you can justify coming?
Sure. Sean Rowley, Public Works. Item 7, we have a bid award to Titan Earthworks for one-time purchase of HDPE pipe for the cost of $34,870.24. This is the bid we opened last week. This is for.
Did you notice how smoothly he got around?
I know,
Pronouncing
he
all those
didn't even say it. I
Yeah.
know it. And I was at the new pipe manufacturing plant in Longview.
Are they manufacturing there or just distributing?
No, they're manufacturing. They got machines and they can do I think he said like from 12 to 48
Oh.
inches, pretty nice facility. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Oh, no worries. And this pipe is for our landfill gas horizontal wells.
I thought we were doing our best not to put plastic into the landfill.
There's good plastic and there's bad plastic.
We want black plastic in the landfill.
Yeah. Once I got out there, I thought I should have taken you or Mike just to see the process and see the whole thing.
Now that you tell me that, I should have gone.
Eh.
Did you remember what the basic materials they use to make the polyethylene?
Oh, I'm sure he talked about, he showed us some of the stuff, but I couldn't tell you the scientific names for it, but they also,
It was a trap, you know.
yeah, they also on their, what they, they'll have a section they cut off or whatever, and they throw that in a deal and it can be reused. They can recycle and they can take recyclables, other stuff and do it. They have to watch it because not all recyclables are the same and they try to keep the mixture, but it uses. I thought it was pretty clean and pretty impressive, yeah.
They must have a lab on the premises, right?
They have people there that test the stuff and make sure that its thickness and weight. It has machine that each, like a 20-foot section of 20-inch pipe should weigh somewhere in this area. So they know the density of their plastic. They don't want weak areas and different things.
Do they use any x-rays or?
I didn't see any x-rays. They may, in the newer building, they have a lot newer equipment and it tests a lot of stuff as it's going through. It may. It was kind of hard to hear. We were in a pretty good group and the machines were running, so it was hard to
Yeah.
keep track of everything, but I thought it was interesting.
Before you go, just a question for the engineer. How do you specify the sand? So I understand that there's all kinds of sand and you're looking for specific sand?
So they're looking for a specific, I was going to call it grit. Now I went to sandpaper. So yeah, they're looking for a specific cleanliness and size particles. So they pull a WashDOT specification that meets what is commonly used on roads. And then we try and sweep up as much as we can and then screen it and reuse it.
But it doesn't have to come from any particular place, like the stuff that came out of Mount St. Helens didn't seem quite, it's not the same as the beach sand or the sand along the river necessarily. Some of it you can use with concrete or with cement,
Right.
and some you can't. I don't know what the difference is between them.
So it's all particle size and chemistry.
That's what I'm
The
driving at.
chemistry for the concrete more than for our application, it's particle size so that you get the traction and the friction built up. But for concrete, it has to do with the chemical composition. So when they put it in with the fly ash and the cement, and so that it doesn't react negatively.
Yeah. It was interesting when it blew in 1980. I was in Vancouver during the weekend it blew, but I was living in Yakima. When I finally got back to Yakima, in the duplex I lived in, I was helping the landlord clean some of that stuff up, and it really had different layers. It was like real white powdery on the top, and you got to the bottom, you had this big black coarse stuff. It was actually, kind of interesting to see.
And that stuff did compact pretty well too, I think. I remember trying to swing a pickaxe through a little bit of that stuff. That wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the recent tests up at the debris plug that keeps Spirit Lake back those tests still say that it's much too unstable for them to construct an overland outlet for the lake. So we have to continue supporting efforts to clean out the tunnel that goes through two fault lines. Thank goodness they're doing it.
Mhm.
The collaborative is asking the legislature for some funding, and there's a pretty good memo from COG about what they say could happen if something happens to the dam and the lake breaches the plug and then washes it all downstream. It doesn't look pretty at all for us in the lower valley. So the efforts are absolutely necessary.
That looks like all your stuff, huh?
Yes,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Did either of you see the article about the damage Hurricane Helene did in the Carolinas?
Pretty horrible.
Yeah, because people built in the hollows. So you see steep slopes coming up
Yeah,
from both sides and,
where's the water and stuff gonna go, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
It had to have been pretty shocking because the area was not used to flooding at all. Then that was, you build where you think you can get away without any problems. And,
Yeah.
you know, most years it does work. But
Gina, looks like you're the only motion item tomorrow. Feel special?
talk to us about hepatitis B.
What,
Hepatitis B or not to be.
To be or not to be, hopefully not to be.
this is the amendment you came and talked to us about a couple weeks ago?
We did, we kind of talked about this one, I think it was last week. Is this an amendment to our consolidated contract with the Department of Health? The amendment's adding 3 different things. The first one is $500 for perinatal Hep B work. It's just sort of a reimbursement based on past cases that the state does every now and then. Also adding about $47,000 for emergency preparedness and response. So that'll just be utilized some of our time as we have capacity to participate in different state, local, and regional planning meetings. And then it's also adding the other half of our annual foundational public health services funding. So the $719,000 is the other half of our annual allocation. And that's the funding we have sort of been talking about primarily in the Board of Health and looking at different priorities. So that's all for this amendment.
I have
Did-
a question for you, and it's really not on this. I think you covered that pretty well when you were in here before. When we do, kind of a general question, when we do contracts and we're giving out money, we say, okay, we're gonna give whatever out of document recording fees, and we sign a contract with an entity, whatever entity it is. How strong is it how strong is the auditing to make sure that that is done correctly and stuff, or what kind of teeth do we have if we ever came upon something that we didn't think was done correctly? What kind of teeth do we have to check that?
Yeah, so we do annual site visits with the providers. Well, let me back up a second. When we first enter into a contract, especially if it's a new provider, we'll work with them really closely on what is reimbursable and what's not, so they know kind of what, when we say program supplies or something like that, we'll work with them really closely on what that means. The same with staff time and what that looks like, what's reimbursable, what's not, and what's expected for the backup documentation so that they can verify the expenses, which is what we would get asked if the state auditor comes down and wants to verify those expenses, we would have to produce certain things. So we make sure the provider understands what those things are as well. And with a new provider, we'll look at the backup for the first month or two, just to make sure we're all on the same page going forward with what that looks like. And then at some point in the contract period, we'll do an annual site visit where we're looking at the requirements of the contract or the program that we're providing funding for to make sure that they're doing what is outlined in the contract and the way that it was expected. If we do run into issues, then we work with the provider on resolving those. That in the past, we have found, some, and we've had to require some payback or changing things as we go forward, those types of things. So that does happen occasionally. And then at any point, if we have a concern or have questions, we reach out. We always have access to further information with the providers that we can take a look at any time.
So do we have people on staff that have the ability to audit numbers? I know you have the ability to say,
Mhm.
okay, you need to spend these to this, and you can look at the receipts and see that. But I mean, to
Mhm.
actually audit numbers and make sure, or if, and I don't know that we do, that's pretty spendy person to keep along. Does the contract give you the ability to, if you really felt, and I don't know that counties ever had this, but if you really felt there was issues, that you could have an independent audit done, an outside firm?
Possibly. I think it would depend on kind of what concerns we had, what that looked like. We certainly have the ability to do, any level of auditing on the funds that we're providing. So, whatever that might need to look like, depending on the concern, we can try to figure that out. We, for the staffing that we have to do these audits, it's, we're able to verify the expenditures to make sure that the money is being spent on what it is supposed to be spent on. Beyond that, we may need some outside help, but it really would depend, I think, on the concern and what
Yeah.
what we'd be looking
I
at.
don't know what the others think, but I think it's probably decent practice to have in our contracts that we have the ability, if it came to that we would be able to pull an outside
Outside.
independent audit to really delve into transactions and make sure the transaction's recorded as it should be type thing.
Yeah, some of the providers, if they accept federal funding, are held to a single audit standard as well. So they have that kind of separate requirement, and that we
Yeah.
do pass that language down in contract when it's applicable. But it's not always, that federal standard's not always applicable if there's not federal funds involved. But
We always, many times would have an independent audit come in and look at the same things we're looking at. It's basically because as a financial institution, we wanted to make sure that everything was upfront and we were doing the right things. And I would expect the same of anybody that we're giving money to. Because I think the state, if we're not giving it outright, they would have problems with us, right?
yeah, and we sort of take the same, we get audited by the state auditors, right? And so we kind of take that same mindset with and carry that through with the providers as well. Like, we know what will be asked of us when the state audits us. And so we want to make sure the providers that we're looking at the providers at that same level as well.
So of the 4 housing projects we've contributed to with our document recording fee, 1 has not started construction at all yet. That's the one in West Kelso. I think Campus Towers is done. And
Sunrise is in process, right?
somewhere
Yeah.
Frank's project is underway. And I had occasion to be out near 38th and Pennsylvania. And that is coming along, although that was supposed to be completed in May, and they've had some delays. And explain, because it's probably 2/3 of the way done. But they're getting second stories put on for the townhouse portion. Looks pretty impressive. They had some delays because the city had to do some street repairs and some sewer line repairs that kind of slowed things down out there.
Once again, I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong. I just think it's good practice that we kind of protect the taxpayers' money, that if we felt something was wrong, that we have, at least have the ability to ask for an independent audit to come in. That had nothing to do with your motion item, but
It's okay, while I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
anything else? Okay.
Yep.
Mm. I don't think I've seen that one. It's be a federal HHS person.
I should remember, however, I don't.
Yeah.
I was asking about a post I had seen where an actual health employee from one of the
Mm.
states actually was questioned, and it said, I regret, or something like that, regret that I no longer can trust
Oh,
information that comes from
the CDC.
the CDC, the experts.
Hmm.
And I wondered if you had seen that. I'll try and find it and
I'll have to
email it
look,
to you.
yeah, Google it.
Um, Anything else for Gina?
No.
Okay, thanks,
you.
Gina. Couple things for us. We have a resolution on there. We're revising the Citizen Ad Hoc Advisory Board. Did you guys get a chance? I looked through it and I didn't really see anything that made any. Most of it was saying BOCC instead of Board of.
Yeah.
Just
Or
looked like
clarifies
some,
it.
language cleanup for the most part. I mean, we can talk about it tomorrow if you do, but I didn't really see anything.
It's fine.
The other thing I wanted to bring up real quick, Commissioner Weber and I talked a little bit about it last Wednesday, I think. We had a person on the Board of Health that asked for a laptop from us. And I know we have not done that for any other groups, and that's not a decision that I want to, make alone. I don't know what you guys saw that. We haven't done that for other groups. If we do, we'd have to probably set up some type of expense account for that. And I don't know if it creates more issues than it solves. I don't really have a sense which way to go, other than I'm just kind of going off history that we have not done this before.
If we were to do that as a general policy, it'd be a nightmare. And we have so many boards out there that
I know it. Yeah.
it would be a serious problem, I think.
I-
It's sometimes hard to say no when, some of these people are putting in a lot of extra time. We're getting a lot of work done by volunteers. If we were to do something like that, I think we'd have to constrain it significantly, like only the chairman of the board gets a laptop. And I'm not even sure that would make sense. And I guess fundamentally, the question is, what is the purpose of the laptop? Like, when I leave the premises here, I leave my laptop in my office,
Yeah,
and I've got my machine at home, and I spend most of my time on that machine
yeah.
at home rather than on this laptop.
I can tell you why the requests come in, but I'm not trying to pick on anybody. They don't like having to, updates. They don't want to keep updating their personal computer so they can get the emails.
Updating?
Am I saying that correct?
To access the county email, the computer needs to be on a certain functioning system, and it's 2 hours.
Something's weird there because I've got a Windows 11 machine and a Windows 10 machine, and I access my email. I don't do a VPN. There's virtually no reason for anybody to do anybody outside to do a VPN.
I don't know if it makes a difference, but it's MacBook, so it's the iOS operating system.
I know it's a necessary nuisance that the fob that I always keep handy here. Anyhow, it's here somewhere. It's for security. It's the duo security, and for me, it's a nuisance because when I'm at home, I may go from the website doing email, going to something to review something, and it'll time me out. And I gotta go log in again. Well, and that's a nuisance. Here, I don't get logged out. But other than that, I'm pretty familiar with that you don't really need a laptop, but
Yeah. And I think I'm just gonna, I would just leave it at that unless we had a desire to work on some fairly strict policy that would, I don't know, it just seems like a big can of worms.
it is a campus. I found it.
Yeah. So is everybody comfortable just saying we're not changing policy at this point in time?
We don't,
I
we
think
don't have
we,
it budgeted.
Yeah, okay,
I think we need more rationale that
okay,
is compelling, and it's not
okay,
compelling.
works for me. Okay, thank you. And you said we had a couple exec sessions that would come in early before 11?
Not any, just. With Jessica, right?
You want to call her? Yeah, I went out to that plant and it's, a metal recycling place was there before.
Oh.
So
okay,
they
that
took the
one.
building they were in, an office building, and they
Okay.
converted it, they added some and they have a line with older dyes that come in through that one. And they share those dyes up and down the West Coast.
Wow.
Like down in California, if they need a 24-inch, you know, they schedule, so, okay, they'll make 24-inch pipe and we'll ship them down, or we want to make 48-inch pipes, so they'll ship up and we'll have them for this run. And then the new building they added is all new technology. The old technology kind of does like this, as the dies come around in a cooling system, and the other one is more like on a table, and it's like this, and
Digital control.
yeah, yeah, and it employs, he said, up to like 50 people, but a lot of it is pretty automated. You know, they kind of monitor the equipment, and they have a person that takes a section off every so often, make sure it weighs right and it looks for any weak spots and does all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was,
That's good to know. I was disappointed though to learn that Epson Toyacom shut down. They're
Oh,
not, they're,
on the
they're
other-
not making, yeah, at the other end of the road, they're not
They've been
making
there
the
for a long
silicone.
time.
I know.
And who shut down?
Toyacom, the Epson plant,
Oh,
that was growing crystals. They finally shut it down, so. They didn't have that many employees there, but still it was a.
yeah,
nice
said-
plant.
you said a very important thing, which is with automation, there'll be fewer employees, greater productivity.
right.
The productivity per employee zooms up. And if you look at nations like India, their productivity per capita is very low. And I know when I was there, the discussion I would say is, why don't you use machinery? And they would say, no, no, that'll put people out of work. And unfortunately, that's an attitude against progress that eventually nails you to, it's like, we can't have cars. We have too many people who have horses.
Yeah. And I think eventually, if you don't, it puts people out of work anyways.
Well, I think, I think something fundamentally has changed in India, though, in the last several years, because its economy has been booming. That doesn't necessarily mean their wages are up to our standards, but I know that they used to have a socialist government, and they've had a more capitalist-oriented government. I think for the last almost 10 years now. And, you know, they've had a lot more growth.
I
They've
would
got an
like,
awful lot of people in a
Oh.
relatively small area that I'm sure still has
I
huge
would,
problems, but.
I would like to believe that that's the case as you reported. Way back when a good friend of mine was from Calcutta, and he emigrated to the United States. That's where I met him at Qualcomm, and he, very smart guy, has a couple of PhDs and all kinds of stuff. And my first trip to India was prefaced by several of the Indians on staff saying how wonderful India is. And I went back there and I saw it's got a serious boatload of problems, including attitude. And their attitude isn't going to change on any decade time scale. It takes a lot longer than that. And when I came back, I asked my friend, well, he said, well, what would you talk about if you were from India and you had nothing good to talk about? You wouldn't talk about it. You'd only say the good things. And I just, I didn't see any difference between Pondicherry, which was a French colony on the Bay of Bengal, versus any place else around there. It's really, anyhow. So
But when you were there, it was still under the new Congress Party. They had pretty tight control of that, Gandhi's party and Nehru's.
yeah, the thing I'm trying to dissuade you from is concluding too strongly, because it takes a lot to change a culture. They had, when I went there was like year 2000, and compare that to the 1950s in Latin America. And I even had a friend of mine who did a lot of business travel, and he did quite a bit of travel into Nigeria. And then he went to India, and he said he'd rather go to Nigeria. You know, what we see here is very seldom what you see from the land, but itself. But this productivity issue is really pretty important. And it also means that when you're going to school, you really want to understand what the new technologies are. You can't be stuck there thinking that you're going to have a job for life as a welder or a truck driver, say. Those things are changing way too fast. Even doctoring, I think, is going to be really pretty interesting. I really am thinking AI has a lot to play in there. You know, does a doctor know all the things, all the nuances of the diseases around the world? Nope. AI does.
assuming it's been programmed correctly.
Yeah, I
It's-
mean, there's a risk there, and I couldn't be more fearful than, I could be more, I don't know that I could be more fearful than you, that AI is going to be way too dangerous. But nevertheless, it's like nuclear energy. You can blow yourself up, or you can make good energy out of it.
All depends whose hands are in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jessica,
Ready.
go ahead. I think. Thanks for coming in a little early. You're probably sit back there, relax, cup of coffee, and we rousted you out, right?
It's warmer because I was sitting in front of my heater. Morning, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I just have a request for an executive session under collective bargaining this morning.
Collective bargaining. How long do you think?
10 minutes.
Okay, so we'll go into executive session for collective bargaining, estimating 10 minutes. Okay, back from executive session, no decisions were made. We have something, go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. A few weeks ago, when we were talking about asking permission to approve COLA increases for our non-represented, I failed to bring forward a request to increase our non-represented employer health insurance contract contribution by $50 a month to $1,900, and which represents, it's consistent with what we've already seen in our non-interest arbitration represented groups. And this is for the budget for 2025.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Anything else? Are you, both of you at 1:30 headed over to Family Promise? Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you.